Your entire life, you had seen curses. It honestly ruined it. Or at least, that's what you thought. Kindergarten was a nightmare. Playing that funny monster game all the time. Elementary school was worse, as on top of the curse sightings, bullying by your schoolmates was added on top of that. But in middle school you were used to it, and if it hadn't been for the bullying getting even worse, you may even looked fondly at your middle school time. It was much, much later, during the second year of high school, when your life changed forever. Since you knew that these things, these ghosts, these monsters, could touch and hurt you, you decided to enter an abandoned building filled with them. It was a sort of attempt at your own life. Sick of it, from the bottom of your heart. But as you offered yourself to them by lying down, legs and arms spread apart, they ignored you. Mostly they just stared at you, confused. Some licking over your face, feet, and only one really tried to bite you. It took you a while to stand up, hoping they would tear you apart. As weird as it sounded, you were analyzing their behavior, their actions, and reactions to whatever you were doing. And eventually you just stood up. A small, eyeball-shaped thing jumped you, biting your foot, making you squeak in surprise and kicking it away. It then mumbled something before running off. It made you realize that these things, sure, they were quite literally evil, torturous creatures, but even you were seemingly too weird for them. At least that's how it felt like. One of them suddenly grabbed you by the shoulders when you stepped outside, and he pulled you back in. You screamed in surprise. The monster now dragging you to the top floor of the abandoned building. There, in a dark hallway surrounded by burned-out candles and mold, stood a Buddha statue. In its outstretched hand, an amulet with a beautifully cut amethyst in its core. It seemed to glow very faintly. The monster pushed you towards it, making you trip. Face first, you slid across the ground until your head hit the statue. And with trembling legs, you stood up. Looking back at the curse, before looking back at the amulet, you gulped and took hold of it. It felt strangely warm, like someone had just placed it here after wearing it for a really long time. The curse was now joined by the other creatures of the building, looking over and to the side of one another, trying to peek at you. And you sighed heavily. There was no other choice. You put the amulet around your neck. And immediately, your body retched, your throat tightened, and your stomach felt like it immediately filled with a viscous liquid. You fell on your knees and vomited out reddish-black sludge. The monsters laughed, growled, giggled, and screamed. Damn it, you had fallen for a trap. What would happen to you? You awoke sometime later, in the black, bloody puddle, the liquid having colored your clothes. God, you felt so gross. And as you grabbed that cursed amulet to throw it away, you immediately lost the urge to do so. Your eyes became cloudy, and as if possessed, you just stood up, on shaky legs. Seconds later, the sensation was gone. Okay, removing it was out of the question. Once again, however, you touched it, this time without the intention of taking it off, and whatever this thing was, it let you. The monsters too were gone, and there was a reason for it. As you returned to the ground level, you discovered a gruesome sight. Corpses piling up to the ceiling, all fresh and bloody. They were slowly dissolving. You recognized the monsters who had taunted you the earlier. Disgust wallowed inside you, and once again you vomited. This time, however, it was regular. Amidst the bloody massacre stood one final creature. A monster. A curse. Or that's what you thought. That you haven't seen before. A blackened skeleton-like apparition. Wet, bloody skin loosely hanging from its form like someone had placed it there. Empty eye sockets and half-agape mouth. The fingers of each hand ending in 30 to 40 centimeter long black blades. It looked at you, seemingly expectantly. Well, well, well. You heard a male voice from the entrance. You took a step back, afraid. But you had already been seen. There was no point. Leisurely, the man speaking leaned against the open entrance door, hands in his pockets, face covered by a blindfold. He smirked in your direction. Don't worry, I already seen you. Come out. He chuckled, and gulping, you stepped into the light, right next to the skeleton creature that was still just looking at you patiently, expectantly, without moving ever so slightly. Is that your Shikigami? He asked casually. Shiki what? The man tilted his head, looking you up and down. You can see that thing, right? He pointed at the skeleton and you nodded. His smirk got wider, immediately recognizing that you didn't know that. You were in fact a Jujutsu sorcerer all along. The man introduced himself as Satoru Gojo, and he explained to you the weird phenomenons that had been haunting your entire life. The Shikigami that you had under your control seemed to have been bound to the amulet. Anyone who wore it would control him. And the fact you yourself were unable to remove it must mean that the Shikigami had found a liking to you. And as fantastical as all the things he said sounded, you were more enamored by him. You had literally just been introduced into what you could call a world of fantasy and magic, yet he talked so casually about it. Your 17-year-old mind instantly fell for him. Not to mention, he was the first attractive guy to talk to you like a friend. And so, you became a new transfer to Jujutsu High, where he became your teacher. It was a year later. You learned everything you could, participated in as many events and missions as you were allowed. Due to the unique nature of your transfer, you had been sent to the first class rather than second, but honestly, you were totally okay with that. By now you were a second year, and thankfully there weren't a lot of students. After all the years of bullying, you really couldn't deal with bigger crowds of people anymore. You'd rather just spend time alone practicing controlling your Shikigami. You had decided to name him Slipknot, after your father's favorite foreign band. You had quickly realized that Slipknot didn't have much going on in his brain. He was simple-minded, only doing anything if ordered, but that was okay. Sadly though, anything else, such as cursed tools or techniques, were sort of locked away from you. You weren't agile or physically strong enough to wield tools, and you could not do cool shit like saying words infused with cursed energy like your friend and classmate Toge Inumaki. But that was okay. Slipknot could hold his own in a fight quite well. Today you were training with Gojo. He had one day suddenly decided, hey, It would be cool if you could perform a domain expansion. And so, behind the back of the other faculty, he began a super harsh training regimen. A domain expansion was an advanced barrier technique, and even to this day, it's considered the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery. It constructs the user's innate domain inside a barrier, infused with their innate curse technique. Within a domain expansion, the user's curse techniques are improved, and any that are activated are guaranteed to hit. Truth be told, Gojo was just super curious as to how yours would look like, since you 100% relied on Slipknot to do anything, really. So what would be his advanced form? What would be his 100% hit chance attack? He was so curious, he didn't even realize that you secretly wanted him to flirt with you. You spent what felt like weeks with Satoru, in a small dojo in the outskirts of Jujutsu High's property, secretly grinding away, leaving the building every night with a pounding headache and very, very sore muscles. Satoru used a borrowed zombie from the high school's dean, and the thing was vicious. It attacked your mind, not you physically. And just merely looking at the thing, even though it was relatively cute, it made your eyes tear up, tongue dry and muscles strain. Over these days you had come to be even more attracted to your teacher, however, and also maybe hate him just a little bit for putting you through this. But one day, late, really late at night, in the courtyard of the dojo, the night sky suddenly seemed to vanish. "Oh boy, it's happening!" shouted Gojo joyfully. The darkness that enveloped you, and the zombie and Gojo was incredibly thick. The stuffed toy panicked, and then it was gone, dragged into the darkness by something unseen. And one blink later, Gojo found himself on solid ground. Looking around, he was on a black stone bridge, suspended by large black pillars, in an endless hallway. Below him, a void of nothingness. The walls were just as black as the bridge itself, braziers hanging from the ceiling, giving sparse light. He whistled. "Huh, impressive, really impressive." He could tell where you were, feeling your cursed energy right below him. Pretty cool. You were weak, a liability for your Shikigami, so by hiding you beneath a thick wall of rock seemed smart. You, meanwhile, were scared. From your perspective, you were on a stone platform, walls surrounding you, even though they were just actually the pillars holding up the bridges. You looked up, or, well, down, into the darkness. "Gojo, where are you?" you stuttered, afraid. "Right above you. Pretty neat domain. That zombie must have had zero chance." And speak of the devil, from above Gojo landed the shredded zombie, destroyed so much beyond repair it was just a bunch of colored wool. Well, how do I explain that to Masamichi? Clicking his tongue, Gojo asked, "How are you holding up?" Your lips quivered. Your head was beginning to hurt a lot, and your entire body felt like it was being pulled at. "I feel sick." "Alright then," chuckled Gojo. "Attack me before it falls apart," he ordered. "What?" "Attack me! I can handle it, don't you worry." "How?" Gojo sighed. "How do you attack? You're a Slipknot. Time to attack me." You close your eyes, sitting down and crossing your legs. "Slipknot, attack!" It was like poking a bee's nest. Countless, dare you say, infinite noises began to erupt from the void beneath the bridge, like blades scraping across naked stone. From the darkness emerged hundreds, thousands of Shikigamis, all looking like Slipknot. One of them looked at you before continuing his ascent, using their claws to climb up the pillars in a scary high speed. "Whoa, this is so cool!" shouted Gojo as the ocean of Shikigamis approached him like a wave of bodies, claws, and bloody meat. Meanwhile, despite the horror you are right now experiencing, you are quickly getting out of breath. You are crumbling under the pressure of not only controlling the infinite mass of bodies, but also the domain. Your mouth slowly filled with a large amount of super runny spittle, like a starved animal staring at its prey. And then Gojo unleashed a mighty punch into the horde. For a few seconds the domain froze like a badly optimized game. Your eyes widened. It felt like somebody had punched you in the stomach. And then you unleashed a torrent of liquid from your mouth before passing out. You awoke, feeling a pair of hands under your back. Holding you up, you lied on the ground. Your eyes meeting Gojo's perfect blue ones. He was smirking. God, he was so hot. His blindfold pulled down like a scarf. "That was one of the top 5 coolest domains I've ever seen. But mine is definitely better." Your face felt wet. "Gojo," you muttered weakly. You haven't really regained all your senses yet. "I love you," you said with a dumb smile, not realizing you were speaking. He furrowed his brows in confusion. "You love me?" he repeated. "I want you to hold me." He was holding you, though. Ah, well, you are groggy. You could be a little dum-dum right now, Gojo thought. "I love you," you said again. Right now you felt a sort of high, similar to the second wind one felt after running a marathon. Despite your brain not really functioning yet, you felt as if you could rip out trees and crush boulders. You're a little young for me." "I'm 18, you complained. And he exhaled, a little happily. "Oh well, how about we make a deal then?" He got closer to your ear, whispering right into it. "If your domain manages to hurt me once, we can go on a date. Alright?" "Hurt you?" The Slipknot clones just barely managed to get into attack range before he just blew them away, and your domain fell apart. "Okay. Deal." It would take you a couple years to manage to do this, however. And by that time, you were either dead, or well, old enough for him to look at you. But for now, he got a terrible, awful, and sinful idea. Gojo just loved teasing people after all. So his face came closer to yours. "For some motivation, I'll give you a little taste." His lips perking as they touched you. Your eyes widened in pure pleasure as you felt him kiss you. The skin contact was barely, but all the more sensual, pleasing, and, well, super freaking hot. Your heart pounded, your face turning red. A mild exchange of cursed energy occurring. That even surprised Satoru. Maybe it was just this little bit of sexy motivation you needed to reach your full motivation and potential. But either way, this was fun. And he'd watch your future progress with pleasure.
Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive.